The rancher promised $18,000 to whoever could tame the horse no one had ever touched. While experienced men stepped back, a ragged boy, ignored by everyone, walked up to the animal. When the horse lowered its head before him, the rancher turned pale. His fingers began to tremble and the entire corral fell into absolute silence. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. The afternoon sun beat down on the town of Sundown, making the dust on Main Street feel like warm powder. But all the noise was down at the Whispering Creek Ranch. A crowd of people stood around the big round corral, their voices a buzzing hum of excitement. A tall man with white hair and a tired face leaned against the fence. This was Hank Briggs. He watched, his blue eyes sharp, as a young man in the corral waved his hat at a jet-black horse. The horse, Midnight, was a storm of muscle and fear. He raced along the fence line, his hooves pounding the dry earth. "You can do it, Jake!" a woman in the crowd shouted. Jake, the cowboy, puffed out his chest. He held a coiled rope in one hand. "Easy now, big fella. Just gonna get to know you." Hank spoke, his voice a low rumble that carried over the noise. "He ain't interested in getting to know you." Jake ignored him. He stepped forward, swinging the rope slowly. Midnight saw the movement and spun away. In a flash, the horse turned and charged right at the man. Jake's eyes went wide. He tried to jump aside, but it was too late. Midnight veered at the last second, his shoulder slamming into the cowboy and sending him flying into the dust. The crowd let out a collective, "Oh!" Jake got up, coughing and covered in dirt. He walked out of the corral, his head down. A man in the crowd shook his head. "That's the fifth one this week, Hank. That horse ain't right. He's got a devil in him." Hank pushed himself away from the fence. He walked over to a wooden post where a sign was nailed. The words were painted in big, bold letters. It said, $18,000 in cash to the person who can tame the stallion. He looked from the sign back to the corral. Midnight was running again, his sides heaving, the whites of his eyes showing. "The offer stands," Hank said to everyone and no one. His voice was flat. "It's just money down a hole," someone muttered. Hank did not answer. He just looked at the horse. A deep sadness lived in his eyes, a sadness no one in the crowd could see. He touched the old swing hanging from the big cottonwood tree near the house, just a quick brush of his fingers, then walked toward the barn. On the other side of the fence, away from the main crowd, a small boy watched. His name was Leo. His jeans had patches on the knees and his shirt was too big. He had been standing there for hours, his thin fingers curled around the wooden rail. He watched the big cowboys with their loud voices and their ropes fail. He did not care about the money. He did not even understand that much money. He watched the horse. He saw the way Midnight's nostrils flared. He saw the way his ears flicked back and forth, listening to all the scary sounds. He saw the long, thin scar on the horse's flank. Leo understood that kind of fear. He felt it in his own quiet heart. A man next to Leo nudged his friend. "Waste of time. That beast is cursed. Remember what happened to Hank's family? Bad luck follows that animal." Leo's eyes stayed on Midnight. He did not think the horse was bad luck. He thought the horse was just very, very scared. Later, as the sun began to drop, another cowboy tried. His name was Roy. He was bigger than the others. He did not use a rope. He just walked into the center of the corral and stood there, waiting for Midnight to come to him. "See?" Roy yelled to the crowd. "It's about patience. It's about showing who's boss." Midnight stopped running. He stood at the far end watching Roy. His head was high. Roy smiled. "That's it. Now we're talking." Very slowly, Roy took a step forward, then another. Midnight stood still. Roy took one more step. The moment his boot hit the ground, Midnight moved. It was not a charge. It was a leap. The horse reared up, his front legs cutting the air. He came down and reared again, a powerful, terrifying dance of hooves. Roy stumbled backward, tripped over his own feet, and landed hard on his back. The wind knocked out of him. Before he could move, Midnight turned and kicked the dirt right near Roy's head, showering him with earth. Then the horse trotted away, snorting. The crowd was silent. No one cheered. It was not exciting anymore. It felt scary. Hank came out of the barn. He helped Roy up and led him out of the corral. He closed the gate and latched it. "That's all for today," Hank said, his gravelly voice tired. People began to drift away, talking in low whispers about curses and bad luck. Hank stood by the corral, alone now. He looked at Midnight, who was drinking from the water trough, his body still trembling. Hank's shoulders slumped. The promise of $18,000 felt heavy and useless. Leo finally let go of the fence. His hands were stiff. He watched Hank walk slowly to the old house, his figure looking thin against the big Montana sky. Leo looked back at the black horse, now standing alone in the middle of the big dusty pen. He did not know about Hank's lost family. He did not know about the secret pain. All he knew was the look in the horse's eyes. It was a look he saw in his own reflection sometimes. The boy and the horse stayed there, one on each side of the fence, as the sun painted the sky in colors of orange and purple. Both of them were alone. Both of them were waiting for something they could not name. The last of the trucks rumbled out of the ranch yard, leaving only dust and quiet behind. Hank Briggs was gone inside his house. The only sound was the soft nicker of the other horses in the distant pasture and the dry whisper of the wind. Leo's legs were tired, but he couldn't leave. He stood by the corral fence, watching the black stallion. Midnight was no longer running. He stood in the very center of the big space, his head hanging low. His sides moved in and out with slow, deep breaths. He looked empty. Without making a sound, Leo climbed up and sat on the top fence rail. He didn't move. He just sat. Midnight's ear twitched. He lifted his head a little and looked at the boy. For a long time they stayed like that. The sky turned a deep blue. A single light came on in the window of Hank's house. Leo thought about the men with their ropes. He thought about all the yelling. He looked at the scar on the horse's side. He knew what it was like to feel trapped and loud and alone. Very slowly, Leo climbed down from the fence. He looked at the gate latch. It was a simple metal hook. He looked back at the house. No one was coming. His heart beat fast in his chest. He reached a small hand toward the latch, lifted it, and pulled the gate open just enough to slip inside. He closed it softly behind him. He was in the corral. The dirt was churned up from all the running. Leo stood perfectly still, just inside the gate. He made his hands stay at his sides. He did not walk toward the horse. Midnight had gone still as stone. His head was up high now, his ears pointed straight at the boy. A warning snort came from his nose. Leo did not move. He took a soft breath. "Hello?" he whispered. The word was so quiet it was almost lost in the wind. Midnight took one step back, his hoof crunching on the dirt. "It's okay," Leo whispered again. He kept his voice like a secret just for the two of them. "They're all gone now. It's just me." The horse did not run. He watched. "I get scared too," Leo said. He took one small step forward, then stopped. Everything is big and loud, and people, they look at you, but they don't see you. Midnight's head tilted. One ear swiveled sideways. "My name is Leo." Another small step. The distance between them was still very great. Leo could see the horse's dark eyes watching him, wide but not wild. He saw the sweat drying on his black neck. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Leo breathed. And then something changed. The tight line of the horse's back seemed to soften. The head, held so high, lowered just an inch. Midnight let out a long, shuddering breath that sounded like relief. Slowly, so slowly it was like watching a cloud move. The stallion took a step forward, then another. His hooves made almost no sound in the soft dirt. Leo held his breath. He didn't raise his hand. He just stood, small and still in his patched clothes. Midnight walked all the way across the corral. He stopped an arm's length from the boy. He stretched his neck out, his nose quivering as he sniffed the air around Leo. His warm breath touched Leo's face. With infinite care, Leo lifted his hand. He held it palm up, letting the horse smell his skin. Midnight nudged the boy's hand with his velvet nose. Then he lowered his great head and pushed it gently against Leo's chest. A tear traced a clean line through the dust on Leo's cheek. He curled his fingers and gently, so gently, touched the horse's neck. He felt the powerful muscle under the warm, damp hair. He felt the steady beat of the animal's heart. "There you are," Leo whispered into his mane. "There you are." From the porch of the old house, Hank Briggs froze. He had come outside to check on the horse one last time before night. He stood in the shadow of the door, a cup of cold coffee forgotten in his hand. He saw the boy in the corral. His old heart slammed against his ribs. He opened his mouth to yell, to tell the foolish child to get out before he was killed. But the yell died in his throat. He saw the wild black stallion, the beast that had thrown grown men, standing quiet as a lamb. He saw the horse rest his head against the small boy's thin chest. He saw the boy's hand, small and pale, stroking the animal's neck. It was impossible. Hank took a step off the porch, his boots silent on the packed earth. He moved closer, drawn like a magnet. He wasn't thinking of the money. He wasn't thinking of curses. He was looking at the boy, at the way he stood, so still and calm, at the way his head was tilted, listening to the horse. The last of the evening light caught the boy's messy hair and his serious, kind eyes. Hank's breath caught. A pain, sharp and old, stabbed right beneath his ribs. The world tilted. For a second, he did not see a stranger. He saw a different boy years ago in this very yard. A boy with the same quiet way of standing. A boy who would talk to scared puppies and lost calves just like that. A boy in patched jeans. Tommy. His grandson's name was a silent scream inside his head. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the ground. The sound made both Leo and Midnight jump. The horse lifted his head but didn't run. He just stepped closer to the boy as if to protect him. Leo turned and saw the old rancher. He saw the man's white face. He saw the shattered pieces at his feet. Fear rushed through him. "I'm sorry," Leo said quickly, his voice trembling. "The gate was open. I didn't mean any trouble. I'll go." He began to back away toward the gate. "No." The word was a rough croak from Hank's throat. He cleared it, trying to find his voice. He took a step closer to the corral fence, his eyes never leaving Leo's face. "Don't go." Leo stopped, uncertain. Hank's weathered hand gripped the fence rail so tightly the knuckles turned white. He looked from the boy's eyes to the calm horse beside him, and back again. The hard stone that had been his heart for 10 long years felt a deep, sudden crack. "What's your name, son?" Hank asked, his voice softer than it had been in a very long time. "Leo," the boy said, his voice still a whisper. He kept one hand on Midnight's neck, as if the horse could protect him from the intensity of the old man's stare. Hank just nodded. He looked from the boy to the horse and back again. The $8,000, the promise, the sign on the post, all of it vanished from his mind. Something much bigger was happening. "You got someplace to be tonight, Leo?" Hank asked, his voice rough. Leo looked down at his worn-out shoes. "No, sir. Not really." "Well then," Hank said. He unlatched the corral gate, the metal click loud in the quiet evening. "You'll stay here. The house is big, too big." Hank turned and walked toward the ranch house, not looking back to see if Leo followed. He just knew he would. Leo gave Midnight one last soft pat, and then hurried after the old man, the gate clicking shut behind him. Inside, the house was dim and quiet. It smelled of old wood and coffee. Hank pointed to a door off the kitchen. "That room there, it's empty. You can use it." The room was small, with a narrow bed and a plain dresser. It was clean, but it felt unused. Leo stood in the doorway, his small bag in his hand. "Thank you," he said. Hank grunted. "You hungry?" Leo nodded. Hank made 2 plates of eggs and toast. They ate at the kitchen table in silence. The only sound was the scrape of forks on plates. "The horse," Hank said finally. "Midnight. He's never done that. Not for anyone." "He was just scared," Leo said, looking at his plate. Hank watched him. "You ain't scared of him?" "A little," Leo admitted. "But being scared together, it's not so loud." Hank didn't know what to say to that. He just cleared the plates. Later he found an old blanket and gave it to Leo. "Might get cold." The next morning, Leo was up with the sun. He found Hank in the barn, mending a saddle strap. "Can I help?" Leo asked. Hank looked at him for a long moment. "You know how to fill a water trough?" "I can learn." So Hank showed him. He showed him where the grain was kept for the other horses. He showed him how to check the fence lines for loose posts. Leo did every small job with a quiet focus. He didn't chatter, he just worked. In the afternoons, Leo would go to the corral. He would sit on the fence or stand inside, and Midnight would come to him. The horse would stand for hours, letting Leo brush the dust from his coat with an old brush Hank gave him. Sometimes, Leo would just talk, his voice a soft murmur. Hank watched from a distance. He watched the boy fix a tear in his own shirt with careful, clumsy stitches. He watched him save half his lunch apple to give to Midnight. Every small thing the boy did sent a pang through Hank's chest. It was a pain mixed with a feeling he had forgotten, something like hope. 1 week turned into 2. Hank started making pancakes for breakfast. He left a new pair of socks, too small for himself, on Leo's bed. They didn't talk much, but the quiet between them was no longer empty. Then one afternoon, a sleek silver car came kicking up dust on the long driveway. It did not belong in sundown. Hank stood up from the porch step where he was whittling, his body going stiff. Leo was in the corral with Midnight, brushing the stallion's long black tail. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. She wore a white pantsuit and shoes that were all wrong for the ranch. She smoothed her jacket and looked at the old house with a frown. This was Moira, Hank's sister. "Hank," she said, her voice crisp. "I called 3 times. Phone's in the house," Hank said, not moving. Moira's sharp eyes swept the yard. They landed on the corral, on the small boy standing next to the legendary wild stallion. The horse was standing calmly, his head lowered. Her eyes narrowed. "What is this?" she asked, walking closer to the fence. "Is this the child everyone in town is talking about?" Leo stopped brushing and looked at the woman. He did not smile. "His name is Leo," Hank said, walking over to stand between his sister and the corral. "He's staying here." Moira let out a short, cold laugh. "Staying? Why on earth is he staying?" "He tamed the horse." "I can see that," Moira snapped. She looked at Leo with clear suspicion. "And I see the sign is still up. $18,000. A very clever trick, young man." Leo's face went pale. "It's not a trick." "Of course it is." Moira turned to Hank, her voice rising. "Hank, think. A strange boy shows up, does some little magic act with the horse you've been obsessed with, and now he's living in your house? He's after the money, or maybe he's after the ranch." Hank's jaw tightened. "He ain't asked for a dime. The money don't matter." "It matters to me," Moira said. "This property matters. We need to sell this place, Hank. It's falling apart. You can't run it. And now you've let some stray off the street move in. This is exactly the kind of sentimental foolishness that ruins people." Hank took a step toward her, his blue eyes hard. "You watch your tongue, Moira. The boy stays." Moira stared at her brother, then back at Leo, who was now holding Midnight's mane, his knuckles white. She saw the way the horse leaned toward the boy, protective. "This isn't over," she said, her voice low and even. "This is a very bad decision, Hank. I came here to talk business, to help you. But I see you're not thinking clearly. I see you're being fooled." She turned and walked back to her car, her expensive shoes sinking into the dirt. Before she got in, she looked once more at Leo. "I will prove it," she said, not to Hank, but directly to the boy. "I will prove you are nothing but a trickster." The car door slammed. She drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and a heavy silence behind. Leo stood frozen by Midnight's side. The warm feeling of the past 2 weeks was gone, replaced by a cold dread. He was a problem again. Hank walked over to the corral fence. He looked at Leo's frightened face. "Pay her no mind," Hank said, his voice gruff but kind. "This is your home now, you and that horse." But Leo saw the worry in the old man's eyes. He heard the echo of the woman's words, asterisk trickster, stray, sentimental foolishness. The words clung to him like burrs as he watched the last of the silver car disappear down the road. The silence left by Moira's car was heavy. Leo finished brushing Midnight, his movements slow. He put the brush away and walked toward the house. He felt Hank's eyes on him but didn't look up. "Don't you listen to her," Hank said from the porch. His voice was firm. "She talks, but she don't know." Leo just nodded and went inside. He felt like a dark cloud had settled over the sunny kitchen. He decided to wash the breakfast dishes, even though Hank had already done them. He wanted to be useful. He wanted to prove he was not a trickster. Hank watched him through the window. The boy's small shoulders were hunched. He was scrubbing a plate that was already clean. Hank's chest ached. He knew that look. It was the look of someone waiting to be sent away. That evening, a cold wind blew in from the north. Leo came in from checking the chicken coop shivering. He had changed into his oldest pair of jeans to do the messy work. "You're freezing," Hank said. "Go get a warmer pair of pants on." "These are the only ones that are dry," Leo said. "It's okay." Hank grunted. "Bring him here tomorrow. I'll fix that knee. It's about to blow out." The next morning, Leo left the worn jeans folded on a chair in the kitchen. Hank picked them up after the boy went out to feed the horses. He took them to his small workroom off the kitchen, where he kept his tools and a sewing kit. He turned on the bright lamp. The jeans were thin, soft from many washings. There were patches on both knees, and one on the seat. Hank found a sturdy piece of denim to cut for a new knee patch. As he smoothed the jeans flat under the light, his fingers brushed over the existing patches. One patch on the left thigh was different. It was a slightly faded blue, a different shade from the rest of the jeans. The stitching was neat, done by a careful hand. Something about the fabric. It felt familiar under his rough fingertips. Hank's breath caught. He leaned closer, his heart beginning to thump. He turned the jeans inside out. There, on the back of that blue patch, was a tiny, faded mark. A child's drawing in permanent marker. A simple, smiling sun. It was almost gone, but Hank knew it. He had drawn it himself to make a little boy laugh. A wave of dizziness hit him. He dropped the jeans as if they were on fire. His hands started to shake. He stumbled out of the workroom, through the quiet house and up the narrow stairs to a room he never entered. He pushed the door open. It was a child's room. A layer of dust covered everything. A small bed, a shelf with toy trucks, a model horse on the dresser. Hank went to the closet. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely open the door. On the floor of the closet was a small cardboard box. He pulled it out. Inside were a few outgrown children's clothes. On top was a tiny pair of jeans. He lifted them out. They were worn at the knees, and on the left thigh was a large, neat patch. A patch made from the exact same faded blue fabric. Hank turned them inside out. There it was, the same smiling sun. He had patched these jeans for his grandson, Tommy, many years ago. A sound escaped Hank's throat, a choked mix of a gasp and a sob. He sat on the dusty floor, holding the two pairs of jeans, one tiny, one small, the matching patches screaming the truth at him. He did not know how long he sat there. Finally, he put the old jeans back in the box. He carried Leo's jeans downstairs like they were made of glass. He found Leo in the barn, stacking feed sacks. The boy looked up, saw Hank's face, and went still. "Is something wrong?" Leo asked. Hank held out the jeans. His voice was a dry rasp. "This patch. Where did you get this blue cloth?" Leo looked confused. He took the jeans and looked at the patch. "My mom sewed that a long time ago. She was always fixing my clothes. She said it was from a pair of pants she had when she was little, to keep a piece of home with me." Hank had to lean against the barn wall. "Your mom," he said slowly, each word heavy. "What was her name?" "Sarah," Leo said softly. "Her name was Sarah. She got really sick last year. She died." He looked down, his fingers tracing the patch. The name was a hammer blow. Asterisk Sarah. Asterisk his Sarah. His daughter who had run away after the big fight. After he'd said terrible things he could never take back. He had searched, but she had disappeared. He thought he had lost her forever. And she had been here, in Montana, all this time. She had a son. Hank sank down onto an old wooden crate. He put his head in his hands. Tears, hot and shocking, squeezed from his eyes and ran through his fingers. Leo watched, scared. "Mr. Hank, are you okay?" Hank looked up. His weathered face was wet. He looked at Leo, really looked. He saw Sarah's kind eyes. He saw Tommy's gentle smile. He saw his own blood. "Leo," Hank said, his voice breaking. "Your mother, Sarah Briggs. She was my daughter." Leo's eyes went very wide. He just stared. "This cloth," Hank said, pointing a trembling finger at the patch. "It's from your Uncle Tommy's jeans. My grandson. You're my family." The word hung in the dusty air of the barn. Asterisk family. Asterisk. Leo didn't understand all of it, but he understood the tears on the old man's face. He understood that the look Hank was giving him wasn't pity or suspicion. It was something else, something like recognition. Slowly, Leo walked over and sat on the crate next to Hank. He didn't know what to say, so he just sat there, close. After a long while, Hank wiped his face with his sleeve. He put a heavy arm around Leo's thin shoulders. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. The secret was out. The patches had told the truth. The boy wasn't a stray or a trickster. He was the last piece of a broken family come home. And Hank knew, with a fierceness that burned away all his grief, that he would protect this boy with everything he had. No matter what Moira said. No matter what she tried to do. Moira Briggs sat in a sleek coffee shop in Billings, her fingers tapping on the glass table. The man sitting across from her did not belong in a coffee shop. He wore a worn leather jacket and his hands were big with scars across the knuckles. His name was Cash Thornton. "So let me get this straight," Cash said, his voice a low drawl. "You want me to go get a horse?" "It's not just a horse," Moira corrected, her voice crisp. "It's a dangerous animal, a liability. My brother is an old man, not thinking clearly. He's being manipulated by a clever little boy." Cash took a sip of his black coffee. "And you want the horse gone?" "I want the asterisk problem gone," Moira said. "The boy has some hypnotic trick with the animal. If the horse is gone, the boy's power over my brother is broken. Hank will see sense. He'll sell the ranch, and you will be paid very well for your help." "How well?" Cash asked, his eyes steady on her. $5,000. Half now, half when the horse is delivered to the auction yard in Bozeman. No one will ever trace it back to you. It will just be a wild horse that broke out and ran off." Cash was silent for a moment. He'd heard of Midnight. Every rodeo guy in Montana had heard the story. The cursed black stallion that couldn't be tamed. Except now they said a kid had tamed him. That part Cash didn't believe. "A kid," he scoffed. "Probably drugged him or something." "Exactly," Moira said, a thin smile on her lips. She slid a white envelope across the table. "This is half. Prove the horse is still wild, take it away. End the little fantasy." Cash picked up the envelope, felt the thickness of the bills inside. He nodded. "When?" "Tonight." Under a sky crowded with stars, an old truck with no headlights rolled to a stop a mile down the road from the Whispering Creek Ranch. Cash got out, a coiled rope in his hand. He moved through the dark pasture like a shadow, avoiding the moonlit patches. He reached the corral by the house. Inside, the black stallion was a darker shape against the dark ground, asleep on its feet. Cash studied the gate. It was just a simple latch. Too simple. This was going to be easier than he thought. The kid was probably asleep in the house. The old man too. He slowly, silently, lifted the latch and slipped inside of the corral. Midnight woke instantly. His head shot up, ears pricked forward. He saw the man's shape and took a step back, a warning rumble in his throat. "Easy, big guy," Cash whispered, his voice oily and smooth. "Just gonna take you for a ride." He began to swing the rope, building a slow loop. Midnight's eyes tracked the movement. The horse remembered ropes. He remembered fear. Inside the house, Leo was not asleep. He was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. He was thinking about the word family. It felt big and strange and warm. He heard a soft noise outside, a thump. He sat up. It was probably just a raccoon, but something felt wrong. He got out of bed and went to the small window that looked out over the corral. At first, he saw nothing. Then a shape moved, a man's shape, and the glint of a rope. Leo's heart jumped into his throat. He didn't think. He just ran, out of his room, barefoot, down the hall. He didn't wake Hank. He burst out of the side door into the cool night air. In the corral, Cash had gotten the rope around Midnight's neck. The horse was panicking, pulling back, his hooves skidding in the dirt. "Stop!" Leo cried, his voice small in the vast night. Cash turned, startled. He saw the boy, small and thin in his pajamas. "Go back to bed, kid. This ain't your business." "He's my horse," Leo said, running to the corral fence. "He's nobody's horse," Cash grunted. He pulled hard on the rope, dragging Midnight toward the open gate. The horse fought, but the rope was tight, and the man was strong. Leo fumbled with the gate latch and ran inside. He went straight for Midnight, not caring about the dangerous man or the swinging rope. "I said get back," Cash yelled, but Leo ducked under the rope and put his hands on Midnight's heaving side. "It's okay. It's okay," Leo whispered, his voice instantly calm. The horse stopped pulling for a second, turning his head toward the boy. Cash saw his chance. He yanked the rope with all his strength, pulling Midnight off balance. At the same time, he slapped the horse hard on the rump. "Yeah!" Startled and hurt, Midnight lunged forward out of the corral gate. Cash ran beside him, keeping a brutal grip on the rope. "No!" Leo screamed. He ran after them, but Cash was already leading the frantic horse into the dark field behind the house, toward the waiting truck and trailer down to the road. Leo ran as fast as he could, the sharp stones and dry grass cutting his bare feet. He could see the big shape of Midnight and the man getting farther away, swallowed by the darkness. He couldn't catch them. He stopped, his chest burning. He watched as the two shapes disappeared over a small hill. The only sound left was his own ragged breathing and the distant, fading sound of hooves. Midnight was gone. Leo stood in the dark field, his feet stinging. The sound of the hooves was getting farther away. He couldn't see anything, but he couldn't go back. He couldn't leave Midnight. He started to run again toward the sound. The land began to slope upward into the foothills. Rocks bit into his bare feet. He tripped and fell, his hands scraping on the ground. He pushed himself up and kept going. The night was very dark, but his eyes were getting used to it. He saw shapes of bushes and trees. He listened hard. For a moment there was nothing. Then he heard it, a sharp, angry whinny. It came from up ahead to the left. Leo changed direction, running toward the sound. He crested a small hill and saw a flat area below. A truck and a horse trailer were parked there, their backlights glowing red. Cash was there, pulling hard on the rope. Midnight was refusing to go up the ramp into the dark trailer. He planted his feet and threw his head back. "Get in there, you stubborn devil!" Cash yelled. He yanked the rope and raised his hand as if to hit the horse again. "Stop!" Leo screamed, running down the hill. His voice was raw. Cash spun around. "You again? I told you to stay put." He turned back to the horse, giving the rope a brutal pull. Midnight stumbled forward one step, his eyes wide with terror. Leo didn't think. He ran right up to them. He didn't look at Cash. He looked only at Midnight. He spoke in the soft, steady whisper he used in the corral. "Midnight, look at me. It's Leo. Just look at me." The horse's frantic eyes found the boy. The pounding of his hooves slowed. He let out a shaky breath. "That's it," Leo whispered, stepping closer. He reached out and put his hand on the horse's sweaty neck, right under the tight rope. "I'm here. We're together." Cash stared, his mouth open. He saw the wild stallion calm under the boy's touch. It was no trick. It was real. For a second he was stunned. Then his face hardened with anger. This kid was ruining everything. "Move," Cash growled, shoving Leo's shoulder. Leo stumbled but held onto Midnight's mane to stay upright. "He doesn't want to go with you," Leo said, his voice trembling but clear. "He's not a pet, kid. He's property, and I'm getting paid to take him." Cash grabbed Leo's arm to pull him away. That was a mistake. Midnight saw the man put hands on the boy. A new sound came from the horse, a deep, rumbling snort of pure warning. He pinned his ears flat against his head. He bared his teeth and lunged forward, not to run, but to push himself between Cash and Leo. Cash jumped back, dropping the rope. Midnight shook his head, and the hated rope fell loose around his neck. "You crazy animal!" Cash shouted. He stepped forward, his fists clenched. Midnight didn't run. He stood his ground. He lowered his head and stamped one heavy front hoof on the hard dirt. Asterisk thud. Asterisk. It was a promise, a threat. Cash froze. He was a big man, used to animals. He saw the look in the horse's eyes. It wasn't fear anymore. It was protection. This 1,000-pound stallion was ready to fight for the boy. Leo reached up and gently took the loose rope from around Midnight's neck. He let it fall to the ground. "You're not taking him," Leo said quietly. He wasn't asking. Cash looked from the fierce horse to the determined boy. He thought about the other half of the money in Moira's envelope. He thought about those hooves and teeth. The calculation was clear in his eyes. "This isn't over," Cash spat, but he took a step back toward his truck. "Your old man and that aunt of yours, they're gonna lose everything, and you'll be back on the street where you belong." He kept his eyes on Midnight as he walked backward to the driver's door. He got in, started the engine, and slammed the truck into gear. The tires spun on the gravel as he drove away, the empty trailer rattling behind him. The red taillights disappeared over the hill. The noise faded. It was quiet again, Leo's whole body started to shake. The fear he had been holding back rushed through him now. He wrapped his arms around Midnight's neck and buried his face in the dark mane. Midnight turned his head and nudged the boy gently, sniffing his hair. He was calm now. The danger was gone. After a long moment, Leo wiped his face. He looked at the dark hills between him and the ranch. "We need to go home, boy," he whispered. He didn't have a rope or a halter. He just started walking, hoping the horse would follow. He didn't need to hope. Midnight fell into step right beside him, his shoulder close to the boy, a warm and solid presence in the cool night. Together, they walked slowly back through the dark toward the single yellow light of the ranch house in the distance. A thin gray light was just beginning to seep into the sky when Hank's eyes snapped open. He didn't know why he was awake. The house was too quiet. He lay still for a moment, listening. He heard no sound from Leo's room. He got out of bed, his old bones creaking. He walked down the hall and pushed open the door to the small room. The bed was empty. The covers were thrown back. Hank's heart gave a sick lurch. He moved quickly now, his bare feet cold on the floorboards. "Leo?" he called, his voice rough with sleep. There was no answer. He checked the kitchen, the bathroom. The side door was unlocked. Hank shoved it open and stepped out into the chilly dawn air. His eyes went straight to the corral. The gate was wide open. The corral was empty. "No," he whispered. A cold fury, hotter than any he had felt in years, rushed through his veins. He saw the tracks in the soft dirt, the deep prints of a man's boots, the skid marks of a panicked horse being dragged, and the small bare footprints of a boy following them. He understood everything in an instant. Moira. She had done this. She had sent someone to take the horse, and Leo had gone after them. Hank did not go back inside for shoes or a jacket. He ran to his old truck, the keys always in the ignition. The engine coughed to life. He followed the tire tracks he could see in the dim light, leading away from the ranch toward the foothills. He drove with a hard grip on the wheel, his eyes scanning the land. The sky turned pink. Then, over a rise, he saw them. A small barefoot boy walking slowly, and beside him, the big black stallion, matching his pace, step for step. They were coming home. Hank slammed the truck to a stop and jumped out. "Leo!" Leo looked up. His face was pale and smudged with dirt. His pajama pants were torn. When he saw Hank, his chin trembled. Hank ran the last few yards and dropped to his knees in front of the boy. His hands hovered, wanting to check for injuries but afraid to hurt him. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" Leo shook his head. He tried to take Midnight, a man named Cash. He had a rope. Midnight was scared, but he was brave. He made the man leave. The words tumbled out in a quiet rush. Hank looked at Midnight. The horse stood close to Leo, his head lowered. He seemed calm, but Hank could see the tiredness in his eyes, the marks of the rope on his neck. Hank pulled Leo into a tight hug. He felt the boy's small body shaking. "You followed him? In the dark? All by yourself?" "I had to," Leo whispered into Hank's shoulder. "He's my friend." Hank held him tighter. He looked over Leo's head back toward the ranch. The anger settled into a hard, cold certainty in his gut. He stood up, keeping one arm around Leo's shoulders. "Let's get you both home." Back at the house, Hank made Leo sit at the kitchen table. He brought a bowl of warm water and a cloth. He gently cleaned the cuts on the boy's hands and feet. He gave him a blanket. He made hot chocolate. He did not speak. His silence was full of a storm. Once Leo was settled, Hank stood up. "You stay right here." He walked out to the porch. He didn't have to wait long. Moira's silver car came down the driveway, fast and clean in the morning light. She got out, her face a mask of prepared annoyance. "Hank, we need to talk about the sale papers," she began. "You sent a man," Hank said. His voice was low and deadly quiet. It stopped her words cold. "You sent a thief in the night to steal a horse. You put my boy in danger." Moira's eyes flickered. She recovered quickly, lifting her chin. "I have no idea what you're talking about. If the horse is gone, it probably broke out. It's a wild animal after all. As for the boy, he's clearly a bad influence." "His name is Leo," Hank roared, the sound shocking in the quiet morning. He took a step toward her. "He is Sarah's son, my grandson, my blood, and you sent a hired brute after something he loves." For the first time, Moira looked uncertain. That's a lie, a convenient story. The patches on his jeans are from Tommy's old clothes, Hank said, each word a hammer blow. His mother was my Sarah. I know it. I feel it in my bones. He is family. And you will look at him, and you will see family, or you will get off my land. Moira stared at him. She saw the truth in his eyes, the absolute conviction. She saw the fury. She swallowed. Her practical mind raced, recalculating. A real grandson changed things, but it didn't change her goal. Even if that's true, she said, her voice icy, it doesn't change the facts. You are an old man. He is a child. This ranch is failing. Sentiment won't feed you or pay the taxes. You need to sell. Hank pointed a calloused finger toward the road. You need to leave. Now. Don't come back. If you send that man cash or anyone else near my boy or my horse again, I will not call the sheriff. Do you understand me? Moira held his gaze for a long, tense moment. A bitter smile touched her lips. She turned and walked back to her car without another word. She drove away, slower this time. Hank watched until her car was a speck of dust. He knew it wasn't over. He knew his sister. She did not give up. She would just find another way. He turned and went back inside. Leo was sitting at the table, the blanket around his shoulders, staring at his mug. Hank pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. He looked at the boy, his boy. She's gone, Hank said. Leo nodded. She'll be back, won't she? Hank reached across the table and put his big, rough hand over Leo's small one. Maybe, but it don't matter. You're my family. No one will take you or that horse from me. Not ever again. Leo looked at their hands, then up at Hank's face. He didn't smile, but the fear in his eyes softened, replaced by a fragile trust. He turned his hand over and held onto Hank's fingers. It was a promise. They were in this together now. A few days passed. The sun rose and set. Leo helped Hank fix the south fence. He fed the chickens. He brushed midnight. But a new quiet had settled over him. He had heard the things Moira said. He saw the worry that never quite left Hank's eyes. One afternoon, a dusty sheriff's car came up the driveway. A tall, kind-faced man in a uniform got out. This was Sheriff Miller. Hank met him on the porch. Afternoon, Hank, the sheriff said, taking off his hat. Walt? Hank nodded. His body was tense. Got a few things to talk about, Sheriff Miller said, looking uncomfortable. Your sister, Moira. She came to see me. Figured she would. She's filed some papers with a lawyer in Billings. She's asking for a competency review. The sheriff said the words carefully. She says you're not able to make good decisions about the ranch anymore. She says you're being influenced by a stranger. He's not a stranger, Hank said, his voice hard. He's my grandson. Sheriff Miller sighed. I believe you, Hank. But the law, it's got steps. She's also made a complaint about the black stallion. Says it's a public danger. She's got a statement from some rodeo fellow named Cash Thornton, saying the horse attacked him. That man was a thief, Leo's voice came from the corner of the porch. He stood there, his hands in fists. He tried to steal Midnight in the dark. Midnight was protecting me. The sheriff looked at Leo with sympathy. I'm not saying I agree with her, son. I'm just telling you what she's doing. It creates a problem. If animal control gets involved, they might have to take the horse for an evaluation, just until things are sorted. No, Hank said, the word flat and final. Hank, if a judge orders it, you won't have a choice, Sheriff Miller said softly. My advice? Get a lawyer of your own. Fight this the right way, and maybe keep a low profile for a bit. After the sheriff's car left, the silence felt heavier. Hank stood on the porch staring at the horizon. Leo walked slowly to the corral. Midnight came to him, but even the horse's soft muzzle couldn't lift the weight in his chest. The next day, Hank went into sundown to see about a lawyer. Leo stayed to muck out the stalls. He took the old wheelbarrow to the compost pile at the edge of the property. As he was tipping it, he heard voices. 2 women from town were walking on the path near the road, not seeing him. Such a shame, one woman said. Hank's a good man, but that sister of his says he's lost his mind over that boy. I heard the boy's a troublemaker, the other woman said. Got that wild horse to do tricks, probably after the money. Now Moira says the horse is dangerous, might have to put it down. Such a mess. Maybe it would be better if the boy just moved on. Save everyone the trouble. The words hit Leo like stones. He froze, the empty wheelbarrow in his hands. He waited until the women were gone, then walked back to the barn, his vision blurry. They were right. He was the problem. He had brought all this trouble to Hank. The legal papers, the sheriff, the talk in town. Hank was fighting for him, and it might cost Hank his home and even Midnight's life. That evening, Hank came back looking tired. "Lawyer's expensive," he said, hanging his hat, "but we'll manage." Leo just nodded. He helped make dinner. He washed the dishes. When Hank went to take a shower, Leo went to his small room. He took his few things, the other pair of patched jeans, the too big shirt, his collection of smooth gray stones, and put them in his small bag. He wrote a note on a piece of paper from his notebook. He slipped out the side door. The sky was turning purple with dusk. He went to the corral and leaned his face against Midnight's neck. "I have to go," he whispered, "to keep you and Hank safe. Be good for him." He turned and started walking down the long driveway toward the main road. He didn't know where he would go. He just knew he had to leave. He had only gone a little way when he heard the quick crunch of boots on gravel behind him. "And just where do you think you're going?" Leo turned. Hank stood there, breathing hard, his face pale in the twilight. In his hand, he held the folded note. I have to go," Leo said, his voice breaking. "The sheriff, the lawyer, the ladies talking. It's all because of me. If I'm gone, Moira stops. Midnight stays. You keep your home." Hank walked up to him. He didn't look angry. He looked heartbroken. He knelt down in the gravel so his eyes were level with Leo's. "You listen to me," Hank said, his gravelly voice thick. "This is your home. You and me and that horse. That's what we're fighting for. Not the land, not the house. Asterisk us. Asterisk." "But they're saying such bad things," Leo cried, tears finally spilling over. "People talk," Hank said. "Let 'em talk. You ain't a problem. You're my family. We fight this together. We don't run." He put his hands on Leo's thin shoulders. "Now, you come back in the house. We'll have some pie. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. Together." Leo looked into the old man's steady blue eyes. He saw no doubt there, only a fierce, stubborn love. Leo dropped his bag. He fell forward into Hank's arms. Hank held him tight, there in the middle of the driveway. The first stars were coming out above them. From the corral, Midnight let out a soft, low whinny, calling his boy home. The air changed the next afternoon. It became still and heavy. The sky to the west turned a strange yellow-green. Hank stood on the porch, sniffing the wind. "Smells like a storm," he said. "A mean one." Leo stood beside him, looking at the odd-colored sky. "I don't hear any thunder." "You will," Hank said. He went to put the tools in the barn. Before he could finish, the silver car came up the drive, faster than usual. Moira got out. She held a thick folder of papers. Her hair was perfectly in place, but her eyes were hard. "We don't have time for this, Moira," Hank said, not even looking at her. "A storm's coming." "This is more important than the weather," she snapped. She walked up the steps. "I have the final sale papers here. A buyer from California. They're offering a lot of money, more than this Dust Bowl is worth. You sign today and all the problems go away. The lawyer, the sheriff, the horse, all of it." Hank turned to face her. "I told you, I am not selling. My answer is no." "Your answer is sentimental and stupid." Moira's voice rose. "Look at this place. Look at that boy." She pointed at Leo, who was watching from the barn door. "You're choosing a fantasy over real security. Sign the papers, Hank." A low rumble of thunder rolled in the distance. The wind picked up, hot and dry. At that moment, Sheriff Miller's car sped down the road toward them, its lights flashing. He didn't turn into the ranch. He stopped on the road, rolled down his window and yelled, "Hank, fire! Lightning strike over in Dry Gulch. The wind's pushing it this way. You need to evacuate. Now!" He didn't wait for an answer. He sped off toward the next ranch. Hank, Leo, and Moira all turned to look west. A dark, towering cloud of smoke was now visible on the horizon, lit from below by an ugly orange glow. "My God," Moira whispered. Hank moved fast. "Leo, get the horses from the pasture into the barn. Moira, get in your car and go." Leo ran toward the pasture gate. Hank sprinted for his old truck. He jumped in and turned the key. The engine clicked. It did not start. He tried again. Click, click. No, 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 he muttered, pumping the gas pedal. He turned the key again. Nothing. The battery was dead. Moira stood by her car, the folder of papers limp in her hand. She looked at the smoke, then at Hank's truck. You can't get it started? It won't turn over, Hank shouted, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. He got out. The smoke was closer. They could smell it now, a sharp, bitter scent in the hot wind. Leo had gotten the 3 other horses into the barn. He ran back out, his face smudged with dirt and panic. The truck? Won't start, Hank said. He looked at the main road. It was too far to run. The fire was moving fast, a wall of smoke and flame eating up the dry grassland. Moira finally moved. She yanked open her car door. I'm not dying here for your pride. She started the engine and sped away, her tires spitting gravel, leaving them behind. Leo watched her go. He felt a cold calm settle over him. He looked at the corral. At midnight. The black stallion was terrified. He ran back and forth, snorting at the smoky air, his eyes rolling white. We have to go on him, Leo said. Hank stared. He'll never let us both on. He's too scared. He will for me, Leo said. He didn't wait. He ran to the corral, opened the gate, and walked inside. Midnight, Leo called, his voice cutting through the horse's panic. The horse skidded to a stop, his chest heaving. Listen to me, Leo said, walking right up to him through the blowing smoke. He put his hands on either side of the horse's sweaty face. You are brave. You are strong. You can save us. Please. Midnight stared into the boy's eyes. He shuddered. Then he lowered his head and nudged Leo's chest. Okay, boy. Okay. Leo took hold of the mane. He looked at Hank. Help me up. Hank hurried over, lacing his fingers together. Leo stepped into the old man's hands and swung onto Midnight's bare back. Hank then put a foot in the stirrup of the fence and hauled himself up behind Leo. The horse shifted under the double weight but held steady. Go, Midnight, Leo said, leaning forward. Go to the road. Hank pointed east, away from the smoke. That way, to the creek bed. Midnight took a few uncertain steps. Then, as a burning piece of grass floated past them on the wind, he understood. He broke into a gallop. He leaped out of the corral and ran, not in blind fear, but with powerful, sure strides, heading for the safety of the gravel road. Leo held tight to his mane. Hank held tight to Leo. They leaned low over the horse's neck as he flew across the land they both loved, leaving the roaring orange glow and the choking smoke behind. The world was a roar of wind and the sickly sweet smell of burning grass. Leo pressed his face into Midnight's flying mane. Hank's arms were a tight band around him. The horse ran with a strength that came from pure heart, his powerful legs covering the ground between the ranch and the main road. They burst out onto the gravel just as a bright red fire truck and Sheriff Miller's car came to a stop. Men in yellow coats jumped out. Midnight slid to a halt, his sides heaving, his coat dark with sweat. Hank slid off first, then helped Leo down. Leo immediately wrapped his arms around the horse's neck, feeling the tremendous beat of his heart. Sheriff Miller ran over. Hank, Leo, thank God. We saw the car leave. We thought you were right behind her. Truck wouldn't start, Hank said, his voice shaky with relief. He looked at Midnight with a new awe. This horse, he brought us. The sheriff looked at the magnificent, trembling animal and the boy clinging to him. He nodded slowly. I'd say that's one brave horse and one brave boy. He turned to look at the wall of smoke. The wind shifted. It's pushing the fire north, away from your buildings. The house might be okay. They waited by the road for hours. Fire trucks raced back and forth. Helicopters thumped in the sky, dropping water. Finally, as the sun began to set, the sheriff came back, his face grimy. It's past, he said. Burned through the north pasture and part of the old timber. Missed your house and barn. You're lucky. Hank put a hand on Leo's shoulder. Luck had nothing to do with it. They walked Midnight back in the twilight. The air was hazy and smelled of smoke, but the terrifying orange glow was gone. The ranch house stood whole and dark against the charred landscape. Moira's silver car was gone. They found the folder of sale papers on the porch steps, the pages scattered and dirty. She had left them behind. She had left them behind. Inside, Hank lit a lamp. He made 2 cups of strong sweet tea. They sat at the kitchen table, too tired to speak. After a while, Leo said, "She's really gone." "Yes," Hank said. "She chose her path. We chose ours." "What happens now?" Leo asked. "With the lawyer and the sheriff's papers." Hank took a slow sip. "I think Sheriff Miller saw enough today. He saw who ran, and he saw who stayed. He saw what family really looks like. I don't think Moira's papers will mean much anymore." The next morning, they surveyed the damage. A black scar ran across the north part of the land. But the heart of the ranch was untouched. The corral, the barn, the house, the old swing under the cottonwood tree. Leo went to get Midnight from the barn. He led him out to the corral. The horse walked calmly, his nose touching Leo's shoulder. Hank watched them. He saw the way the boy moved with the horse, and the way the horse watched the boy. He felt a peace he had not known in 10 years. A few days later, a different car came up the drive. It was a kind-faced woman from the county family services. Sheriff Miller had called her. Hank and Leo sat with her at the kitchen table. "Sheriff Miller told me all about the fire," the woman said, "and about recent events. He also told me about the familial connection you've established." She looked at Leo. "Is this where you want to be, Leo?" Leo looked at Hank, then at the window where he could see Midnight in the corral. "Yes, ma'am. This is my home," she smiled. "Then my job is to help make it official." Weeks passed. The grass in the burned area began to show tiny green shoots. One afternoon, Hank went to the old wooden post where the sign about their $18,000 still hung, faded and worn. He took it down. The nails came out with a squeak. He threw the old sign on the woodpile. He went into the barn and found a new, clean piece of wood. He spent the rest of the day painting, his big hands careful with the brush. The next morning, Leo came out to find Hank nailing the new sign to the same post. It read, "Whispering Creek Ranch, home of Leo Midnight." Leo stared at it, his throat tight. "Is that okay?" Hank asked, stepping back. Leo nodded. He couldn't find words. He just walked over and took Hank's rough hand in his. Together they turned and looked at the ranch, at the house that was no longer empty, at the corral where a once wild horse stood quiet, waiting for his boy, at the land that was healing and the family that had been found. The promise had been kept. It was never about the money. It was about a boy who wasn't afraid of fear, a horse who remembered kindness, and an old man who learned to love again. It was about coming home.